I got pulled over for a broken taillight, but when the cop scanned my license he drew his gun and said my wife reported I did something horrific to our kids. Except I've never been married or had kids, and what I found at the station shook me. I was arrested on a Thursday night for beating kids I didn't even know existed. Yeah. Let that sink in. 1 minute, I'm driving home from a late client meeting on Route 74, trying to ignore the check engine light. The next, red and blue lights flash behind me, painting the inside of my truck like a damn disco. I pulled over, rolled my window down, license already in hand. The cop looked young, smug, the kind of guy who enjoys the badge more than the job. He asked for my name. Evan Porter, I said, and something in his eyes changed. He stepped back, touched his holster, and told me to get out of the vehicle. When I asked why, he didn't answer, just ordered me to put my hands where he could see them. I thought maybe my plates got mixed up with someone else's. I even tried to joke, but then he said the words that froze the air in my chest. Sir, your wife filed multiple reports 6 months ago. Domestic abuse. 2 kids injured. You've been evading the restraining order. Wife, kids, abuse. It was like he was reading someone else's nightmare out loud. I told him I wasn't married. Never have been. No kids. No one even lives within 10 miles of my place. He didn't listen. He cuffed me right there on the shoulder of an empty Arizona highway. At the station, they booked me like any other criminal, fingerprints, mugshot, the whole humiliating process. I kept repeating that there had been a mistake, that someone had stolen my identity. No one cared. To them, I was another scumbag trying to lie his way out of a child abuse case. When they finally let me make a call, I dialed my lawyer, well, my business lawyer, not a criminal one. He didn't answer. The only thing left to do was sit in a beige interrogation room and stare at the metal table while the truth, or someone's twisted version of it, got stapled into a folder with my name on it. When the detective came in, he slid a stack of photos toward me. Those are your children, he said. 2 kids, 1 girl, 1 boy, looking terrified in front of a white wall. Emma and Luke Porter, ages 6 and 4. I swear to God, I'd never seen them before. Then came a marriage certificate. My name, a woman's name I'd never heard, Clara Voss. A Las Vegas date. A signature that looked exactly like mine. My mind went blank, like every circuit overloaded at once. This wasn't just identity theft. This was a full-on identity construction. Someone had built an entire fake life around me. Marriage license, children, police reports, photos, even text messages. And as the detective listed everything off, joint bank accounts, CPS records, bruising reports, insurance policies, one thing kept echoing in my mind. Why? Why me? He said Clara and the kids were in protective custody. He said I hadn't been allowed contact for 6 months. And then he told me something that made my stomach drop. There were life insurance policies on both children. $200,000 each. He looked me dead in the eye and said, if anything happens to those kids, you're the first person we'll come for. That was the moment it clicked. This wasn't about money. This wasn't about revenge. Someone was setting me up to take the fall for a murder that hadn't even happened yet. And I knew whoever built this wanted me buried before the bodies ever hit the ground. Before all this, I thought my life was simple. I'm 36, an architect in Flagstaff, Arizona. I built luxury homes for people who could afford to buy peace. Glass boxes in the desert, open sky, silence. I lived alone in one of my own designs, halfway between town and nowhere. After my parents died in a car crash 5 years ago, I stopped trying to connect with people. No dating, no family, no drama. I used to joke that isolation was my love language. Guess someone took that literally. The only people I ever dealt with were clients, contractors, and my lawyer, Caleb Ross. Caleb handled my contracts and permits. He was sharp, calm, a little too smooth, but in this business, smooth mattered. About 2 years before the arrest, I'd hired a company called Sunridge Systems to install my home security setup. A tech named Ryan came out to handle it. Friendly, talkative, maybe late 20s. He stayed a full day, wiring the cameras and installing biometric locks. I remember handing him a check and my driver's license for verification. That's probably when he copied everything, my number, my signature, my data. I never thought twice about it. Then, around a year later, I started getting weird things in the mail, junk addressed to Evan and Clara Porter. At first, I figured it was a clerical error. Maybe whoever lived here before me had a wife named Clara. But my house was brand new. No before. Then came the credit card applications. The congratulatory letters from insurance companies. One even said, "Congratulations on your new family policy." I laughed, shredded them, moved on. But then a call came from a pediatric clinic in Phoenix confirming an appointment for your son, Luke. That was the first time I felt a chill. I told them they had the wrong number. The receptionist hesitated. "This is Evan Porter, right? From Sedona? Date of birth April 23rd, 89. Every detail matched. That night I couldn't sleep. I checked every account, every document, every signature I could find. Everything looked clean. Whoever was using my name wasn't stealing from me. They were building something. Fast forward 6 months later, my business lands a massive project designing a resort in Sedona. Caleb, my lawyer, handles the contracts. I was on top of the world. Then he hired a new assistant, Clara. Said she used to work in real estate, had experience with client accounts. I barely spoke to her. Just polite nods, occasional small talk about deadlines and invoices. Looking back, I should have noticed the little things. How she always used my name when she didn't need to. "Thank you, Mr. Porter. Great design, Evan." The way she smiled when I signed documents. How once I caught her staring at me like she was studying a piece of furniture she'd already bought. 2 months later, Caleb said she quit suddenly, family emergency. He looked disappointed but not surprised. I didn't think twice. Then came the arrest. Sitting in that cell, I replayed every detail. The timing, the forged marriage certificate from Vegas, the insurance policies, the fake kids, and that name, Clara Voss. She'd used her real first name. That wasn't arrogance. That was a signature. She wanted me to know who'd done it. And when my lawyer finally came to see me the next morning, his face said it all. "Evan," he whispered, "whoever did this didn't just frame you. They've been setting it up for years. They knew everything about you." I remember leaning forward across the table, my wrists still sore from the cuffs. "Then we find out who they are," I said, "and we burn it all down." They released me after 48 hours. No charges yet, just pending investigation. But the damage was already done. My mugshot was online. My firm's biggest client pulled out of a $2 million contract within hours. The project was dead before I even got home. I didn't even bother explaining to anyone. In a small town, rumors travel faster than facts. To them, I was the architect who beat his kids. My lawyer, Caleb, told me to lay low. "Let me handle this quietly," he said. "We'll prove identity theft." But I knew better. Whoever built this had planned every step. That meant they'd already thought of proof. The day after I got home, I noticed something on my porch. A photo in an envelope. No note. Just a picture of a woman and 2 kids smiling in front of a house I'd never seen before. Scrawled on the back in neat handwriting. "Home is where the heart is. See, Clara." I felt this cold, hollow rage building in my chest. I'd spent my whole life avoiding drama, avoiding chaos, and someone had dragged me into the middle of hell just to watch me burn. I started digging. I didn't sleep much. I went through every file, every document, every record with my name on it. Then I noticed something odd in my company's financials. 2 joint accounts under my name with someone listed as co-signer. Clara Voss Porter. Joint accounts. Opened a year ago. Deposits from freelance design consulting. Withdrawals totaling nearly $100,000. She was stealing in plain sight. That's when Caleb called me. "I found something," he said. "You'd better come in." At his office, he had a file open on his desk. Fake tax returns. Marriage license from Las Vegas dated 2 years ago. My name and hers. Perfect signatures. And behind that, a fake joint mortgage application for a property in her name. "She's not working alone," Caleb said. "There's a guy with her. His name's Ryan Hale. The tech. The security installer. It all slammed together in my head like the click of a lock. He'd installed cameras in my house, and now I realized they weren't just for me. They'd been watching me the whole time, studying my routines, learning my speech, my handwriting, everything. Caleb kept talking, but I barely heard him. I was already somewhere else, picturing Clara's face, that soft smile she used when she said my name like it belonged to her. I asked Caleb where they were now. He hesitated. Evan, I need you to promise me you won't do anything stupid. I didn't promise. He sighed and slid a paper toward me. They're living under your name in Santa Fe. Got an address through a company shell. But listen to me. If you go there, you'll make this worse. You're the suspect here. I nodded, walked out, and drove straight to Santa Fe. The house was easy to find. A neat two-story with fake shutters and a minivan in the driveway. I sat there for almost an hour watching through the windshield. And then I saw her, Clara, carrying groceries, wearing a gold ring on her left hand. A kid ran up to her, the same one from the photo. She bent down, kissed his head, and said, "Come on, Luke, Daddy's waiting." And that's when the door opened. A man stepped out, Ryan Hale. He kissed her, called her babe. And for one dizzy second, I realized something horrifying. Ryan was me. Same hair color, same height, same build. The bastard even had my exact tattoo on his wrist. He didn't steal my name. He became me. And from the way she laughed when she looked up at him, I knew this wasn't random. They'd been planning this for a long, long time. And they weren't done yet. When I saw them together, Clara and Ryan, my fake wife and my doppelganger, I didn't feel anger at first. I felt sick. They were laughing, carrying groceries, talking to those kids like it was the most natural thing in the world, like I was the intruder in their story. But the more I watched, the more I realized something wasn't right. The house was spotless, too perfect, like a model home. Every light on, curtains half open, a display, not a home. And then I noticed cameras, two mounted on the porch, one above the garage, all pointed inward. I took a photo, drove off, parked a mile away, called Caleb. They're using the same security tech I have. Same wiring pattern, same system model. I told him. That's impossible, he said. You're the only client that installer ever had in Arizona. I checked. Yeah, I said. That's what worries me. I didn't sleep that night. I kept seeing Ryan's face. My face. He had my gestures, my tone, my handwriting. I saw a piece of mail in his hand when he walked out of the house. He'd forged everything down to the way I folded bills in my wallet. The next morning, Caleb called with something that made my stomach turn. "Evan, you need to hear this," he said. "I spoke to someone in insurance fraud investigation. There's a $500,000 life insurance policy under your name, for your wife and 2 children. Guess who the beneficiary is?" I already knew. "Me," I said quietly. He hesitated. "Exactly. Which means when they die, you collect. But since they're living as you, when something happens to them, the world will think you murdered your own family for the payout." It hit me like a punch to the ribs. They weren't just stealing my identity. They were building a narrative where I was the monster who'd killed his wife and kids. And they were almost done writing it. I drove back to Santa Fe that night and watched the house again from a distance. Around midnight, a black SUV pulled into the driveway. A woman got out, clipboard in hand, CPS badge on her jacket. I watched as she went inside, stayed 15 minutes, came out smiling, carrying a sealed envelope. When she left, I followed her, tracked her to a rundown apartment complex on the edge of town. I waited until she went inside and then wrote down the license plate. The next day, I ran it through a friend who worked at the DMV. It belonged to Simone Reyes, a social worker. Caleb confirmed it later. Simone had ties to child insurance fraud investigations in 3 states. Every time kids under her supervision died tragically, payouts followed, always through shell accounts, always with fake guardians. That's when it all clicked. Clara and Ryan weren't just scammers. They were part of something bigger. A network that used kids like props, built fake families, staged accidents, collected the insurance, and vanished. and now they'd put my name on the paperwork. If those kids died, I'd be the grieving father and the primary suspect. They'd collect the money while I rotted in prison for a crime I didn't commit. I remember sitting there in my truck, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. The desert outside Santa Fe looked endless, hollow, silent. And that's when the plans started to form. They thought I was an easy target, a loner with no one to vouch for him. But what they didn't realize was that I'd spent my life designing structures. I knew how to find weak points, and I was going to tear theirs down, piece by piece. I stopped thinking like a victim and started thinking like an architect again. Every system has a structure, even a con. And if you study the structure long enough, you find the weak points. The first thing I did was rebuild trust with Detective Rains, the one who'd arrested me. I called him calmly, said I had new information. He didn't want to hear it at first, thought I was spiraling. But when I sent him proof of the joint accounts and the life insurance policies, he started to listen. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" he asked. "Because I didn't have a reason to think my entire life was being used as a murder plot," I said flatly. Rains met me at a diner the next morning. I showed him everything, the documents Caleb pulled, the fake accounts, even photos of Clara and Ryan living under my name. He looked like he wanted to throw up. "This is bigger than fraud," he said. "It's homicide in progress," I replied. He agreed to reopen the investigation but warned me not to interfere. I smiled, nodded, and ignored him the moment I walked out. I didn't need to chase Clara and Ryan. They'd come to me, because people like that can't resist tightening the noose themselves. They'd built the perfect narrative, now they just needed their ending. And I was going to hand it to them. I called Caleb and said, "I want to meet her." He thought I'd lost my mind. "Evan, she framed you for child abuse. What could you possibly say to her?" "Whatever she needs to hear," I said. "I'm done defending myself. I want her to think she's already won." We worked it through the system, official, documented, supervised. I requested a meeting with my wife to discuss settlement and child visitation. The judge approved it. The meeting was set for the following week at a CPS facility. But that wasn't the real meeting. While the courts arranged the legal one, I was building something else. A stage. I called in favors from everyone I'd ever helped design for, engineers, security consultants, even an old friend who used to work in film production. We wired my entire house with cameras and mics, hidden in air vents, light fixtures, smoke detectors. Every room had multiple angles. Every conversation would be recorded to a secure server offsite. I also contacted one more person, a private investigator named Gail Trent, a woman with a past in law enforcement and a reputation for getting results the legal way or not. She'd seen cases like this before. Identity theft that turned into full-blown conspiracy. She didn't ask for sympathy, just a timeline. When I finished, she said, "You want to bait them?" "Exactly. And you want me to help rig the hook?" "Exactly." By the time the supervised meeting came, I was already playing another game. Clara walked in wearing a cardigan and fake concern like a costume. She acted like a woman whose husband had finally come crawling back, full of guilt. I told her everything she wanted to hear. "I think you're right," I said softly. "I've been confused. I want to fix this." She smiled, touched my hand. "You just have to stop fighting, Evan. We can still make this work." That was it. The line I'd been waiting for. She wasn't scared of me anymore. She pitied me, thought she'd broken me. When the session ended, she whispered, "Come home, Evan. Let's talk privately. The kids miss you." And there it was, the invitation. I told her I'd think about it, but in my mind, the design was complete. They'd walk into my house believing it was their victory lap. But it wasn't a home anymore. It was a trap. The night before the setup, I couldn't sleep. The cameras were in, the mics were live, the cops were ready. All I had to do was wait for Clara and Ryan to take the bait. But something felt off. A detail I couldn't shake. When I'd first shown Caleb the forged accounts and paperwork, he hadn't seemed surprised. Shocked, yeah, but not blindsided. I'd assumed that was just him being composed. But that composure started gnawing at me now. He was the only one who'd had full access to my legal documents and identity over the last 5 years. The only person I'd trusted without question. And suddenly, I realized how perfectly timed everything had been. The fake marriage license had been filed right after he'd notarized my last set of business contracts in Nevada. The joint accounts were opened through banks Caleb used for our real estate transactions. The fraudulent marriage certificate even listed him as the witness. That wasn't coincidence. That was architecture. My stomach turned. I grabbed my laptop, pulled up my firm's transaction logs, and ran a cross-check on IP addresses for the online filings. My blood ran cold. The location matched Caleb's office. He'd helped them. The betrayal hit harder than the arrest, harder than the lies. He'd been my one friend, my anchor, and he'd sold me out. I called Gail. "I think Caleb's in on it," I told her. She didn't sound surprised. "I had a feeling," she said. "I ran his financials last night. He's got offshore deposits, 3 of them, from a shell company connected to your wife, Clara Voss." "How much?" "500,000. I felt something inside me break. All this time, while I'd been losing my reputation, my career, my sanity, he'd been cashing in. He'd introduced Clara to me. He'd brought her into my company. He'd helped them forge everything, make it believable. Gail's voice cut through the rage. "You still want to go through with tomorrow?" "Hell yes," I said. "But I'm changing the blueprints." The new plan was simple. I wouldn't just trap Clara and Ryan. I'd trap Caleb too. I called him that night, pretending to panic. "Clara wants to meet at the house tomorrow. I'm scared she'll twist something again." He played his part perfectly. "Evan, I'll come by. I'll help you mediate. We'll keep everything calm." "Yeah, I bet you will," I thought. By morning, my house was ready. Hidden cops in the basement. Gail monitoring feeds from her laptop in my garage. Every word, every sound, recorded. At 10 a.m., Clara arrived with Ryan, and to my fake surprise, Caleb showed up 5 minutes later, looking concerned. When Clara hugged him first instead of me, I saw the flicker of guilt in his eyes, or maybe pride. We all sat in my living room, the kids quiet and confused on the couch. Clara started the act again. Teary apologies, talk of healing. Ryan stood behind her, arms folded, smirking. And Caleb played moderator, like a man trying to keep 2 volatile exes from exploding. Then Clara said it. "I think we should finalize the policy papers today, Evan. End this. For the kids." I tilted my head. "You mean the insurance policies?" The air froze. Ryan's face changed, first shock, then calculation. Clara tried to cover. "I mean custody paperwork." But I was already on my feet. "Don't bother. The cops in my basement heard you." And then, something I didn't plan for, Caleb pulled a gun. Not at me. At Ryan. "Shut up," he said, voice shaking. "You two were supposed to disappear after the payout. Not drag me into this circus." Everything exploded at once. Ryan lunged. The gun went off. Clara screamed. The hidden officers burst out of the basement, guns drawn, shouting. Gail stormed in from the garage yelling, "Drop it! Drop it now!" Ryan hit the floor first, shoulder bleeding. Clara tried to run, but Gail tackled her hard. Caleb froze, gun shaking in his hand, eyes wild. "You don't understand," he said. "I was supposed to walk away clean." I stepped closer, my voice low. "You built this whole thing, Caleb. You forged every piece. You sold me out for money." He looked at me, not angry, just hollow. "You're right," he said quietly. "But you were always too blind to see how easy you made it." Then he dropped the gun. It was over, or so I thought. Caleb didn't talk for 3 days after the arrests. They had him in a holding cell, separated from Clara and Ryan. The DA called me in when he finally cracked. When I walked into the interrogation room, he looked like hell. Eyes sunken, tie gone, hands trembling. The man who used to charge $400 an hour now looked like a washed-up substitute teacher. He didn't look at me when he started talking. "You were the perfect mark, Evan. You built the kind of life that screams no one will come looking for him." I just stared at him. "Go on." He rubbed his face. I met Clara 3 years ago at a real estate seminar in Phoenix. She was already running small identity scams. She had a way of reading people. I thought I could use her. Then she met Ryan, the security guy, and they started talking about something bigger. A full-life fabrication. Pick a man with no family, no close ties, good credit, and predictable habits. Clone his identity. Build a fake marriage, fake kids, fake abuse reports, fake financials. Then stage an accident. Kill the kids, maybe the wife too, and let the evidence point to the husband. The husband, goes to prison and we collect the life insurance through a proxy. I felt my stomach turn. And the kids? He hesitated. They're real. All of them were. Foster kids from a corrupt CPS worker, Simone Reyes. She supplied children to the network. They always came from bad situations. No one missed them when they disappeared. My chest tightened. So what, they just rotate through them? Like props? He nodded. They used them to build stories. The last two, Emma and Luke, were supposed to die in a house fire next week. Clara already had fake evidence of you threatening her. Texts, recorded calls, bruises on the kids. It would have been airtight. You'd have been in prison before anyone realized they were dead. I just sat there, staring through him. He kept talking like he needed to get it all out. Clara's done this before. 2 other times. Each time, different names, different men. The last one was a dentist in Nevada. He killed himself before the cops figured it out. I felt sick. And you helped her? He finally looked up. I didn't think she'd actually kill them. I thought it was all insurance fraud. Paper crime. But she enjoyed it. She said real tragedy made the evidence stronger. That line stuck in my head like a nail. Real tragedy makes the evidence stronger. That's who she was. She didn't just want money. She wanted to build something permanent. Something that would destroy people completely and leave her untouched. The detective asked, why Evan specifically? Caleb didn't hesitate. She picked him. Said he was clean. Isolated. Grieving parents. No wife. No kids. No siblings. Lived in the desert. Perfect canvas. He looked at me. You were the blueprint, Evan. The test case. If it worked on you, she was going to scale it. She called it replication. A system for manufacturing fake lives to harvest real deaths. I couldn't breathe for a moment. They weren't con artists. They were builders of grief, of paperwork, of lies. They designed tragedy like I designed houses. And for the first time, I understood the full horror of it. Clara didn't pick me because I was weak. She picked me because I was efficient, predictable, easy to reconstruct. She'd studied me for months before she ever set foot in my office. My house, my work, my habits, they were all data points. I wasn't just a victim. I was a prototype. I walked out of that room shaking, half from rage, half from the cold realization that if I hadn't caught them when I did, 2 children would already be dead, and I'd be sitting in prison for their murders. That night, I went home to my empty house and sat in the dark for hours. I looked around at the walls I'd built, the glass, the symmetry, and I understood exactly what I needed to do next. They built false structures to destroy people. I'd build one more structure, designed to destroy them. I didn't want blood. I wanted proof. I wanted them caught in the thing they thought they'd built to perfection. Their own story. That's the architect in me. Not the one who designs pretty houses, but the one who maps the flow of truth until the lie collapses under its own weight. First, we saved the kids. While Gale and Detective Rains pulled warrants and spun a legal web, I flew under the radar. I traced every shell company, every deposit, every clerk who'd signed off on a paper. I found Simone Reyes' rental car receipts, the foster placement files she'd cooked, the bank accounts that funneled payments into an offshore node. Gale planted journalists at the right desks. Rains quietly alerted federal marshals to move Emma and Luke into real witness protection before anyone could touch them. Then we set the trap. It was boring in parts, digging through server logs, subpoenaing CCTV, getting wire transfers traced to accounts that vanished into Cyprus shell companies. But the payoff was cinematic. Clara, Ryan, and Caleb thought I'd been reduced to a husk. They thought I'd fold. So when Clara agreed to finalize the insurance paperwork at my house, the very house she tried to make mine on paper, they walked into a room that recorded every word and gesture from 10 angles, saved to an encrypted server offsite. Gail had a team monitoring live feeds. Rains had officers staged nearby. I wore a wire and played the good fool perfectly. Caleb was the moment that felt the most like cold iron sliding into place. He'd come to my house acting concerned, hands trembling as if reality had snapped. When Clara started gushing about tying up loose ends, and Ryan joked about lighting the plan, Caleb tried to control them like a partner with buyer's remorse. He drew a gun when the plan started to fray. That's the point where everything turned. The gunshot in my living room wasn't cinematic either. It was loud, ugly, real. Officers poured in, lights, cuffs, the whole thing. Ryan went down with a shoulder wound. Clara went limp with shame and rage. Caleb cried. I remember the hollow sound of his confession later like the dropping of a scale. He'd taken money. He'd rationalized every step. He'd told himself he was helping a family with bills. He had been building monsters. Court moved fast after that. The DA loved our evidence, the recorded confessions, the bank trails, the notarized forgeries tied to Caleb's IP, the CPS placements traced back to Simone Reyes. The media called it a predatory family fraud ring and treated it like a true crime carnival while the victims were quietly protected. Simultaneous indictments rolled out in 3 states. Caleb pleaded guilty to fraud, conspiracy, and multiple counts of identity falsification. He got 12 years. Clara and Ryan didn't get mercy. They got life with parole dates that read like a slow burn on paper, long enough that the system would keep them where they couldn't hurt anyone else. Simone got 25. The judge used the word predation more than once and didn't bother sanitizing his disgust. Emma and Luke, they are alive. They went into a program that actually cared, not the bureaucratic garbage that once handed them like props. I visited them during the trial under strict supervision. Emma looked at me like someone checking the pulse of a stranger who had saved her life. She asked, quietly, "Will they come back?" I told her, "No." That felt like the first honest sentence I'd spoken since all of it started. Revenge didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like paperwork turned into justice, like patience turned into a verdict. The odd thing is what I learned about myself in the middle of it. I used to think my isolation was armor. Turns out it made me visible to people who like to build things out of other people's lives. But it also made me precise, focused. When you spend years designing structures, you start to see the seams where someone else's fake life will split. After the trials, the DA offered me a role consulting on complex fraud cases. Gail and I started a small practice, legal, ethical, boringly procedural, that specializes in pulling these structures apart before they can do real damage. We call it the Blueprint Project. We don't hunt, we document. We don't speculate, we prove. I like that rule. People ask if I feel better. Some days, yes. Mostly, I feel cautious. Trust is a different thing now. I lock my doors, I check my cameras, and I read the fine print on every contract like it's a religious text. But when Emma sends me a crayon drawing of a house that doesn't look like any of mine, messy, crooked, full of color, I stick it on my office wall. That's the part one didn't design but turned out to be the most important. You learn something ugly in the middle of revenge, that monsters can be talented designers. The consolation is uglier. They're still sloppy about one thing. They never expect the person they tried to erase to build something that actually lasts. I still build houses for a living. I also build cases now, one more structure at a time. If you ask me whether I'd go back and do it differently, I'd say no. But if you ask if I sleep better, I'll tell you the truth. I sleep with one eye open. Keeps the light from surprising me.